Hello, everybody. Today we're going to talk about supplements with the Blue Train Essay Specialist team. We're going to talk about what the schools are asking you. We're going to talk about how to make a workflow and how to personalize each supplement so it's actually addressing all these different schools. Some people are watching this saying, what's a supplement? Well, as many of the high school students that are in the throes of the college application process will understand, supplements are the things that will never end. They are the part of the process where you have to answer smaller essay prompts or shorter essay prompts for all the various schools you're applying to. So for example, let's just look at where these come from. So if we go to, this is the Common App and we pick any particular school. I'll pick University of North Carolina and I'll scroll down here and then I look at the questions. If I go down to, sometimes it's in academic, sometimes it's in writing. This one here would be in short answers actually. So they will ask us, answer one of these following questions, expand on an aspect of your identity, if you could change one thing about where you live. And this one here is asking about, you can add another essay from a different source. Every school is going to have different ones, and this can be overwhelming for students. So what we're going to talk to everyone today is about the main ones that we see. The main ones that we see are why this school, why Boston University, why Tufts, why are you interested in coming here? Why are you interested in pursuing this major or this field of study? Describe a community you come from. We see this one all the time. How will you contribute to our diversity? And then we have some oddball miscellaneous ones. But before we dig into each of these, like we usually do, we are going to kind of talk to everyone about the beginning of the process. So team, when we have our students that are starting this process out and they are thinking, my gosh, I have all of these little supplements to do. What do you guys do to help them kind of talk them off the ledge, so to speak, and actually get them organized? Thoughts, insights, tips, action. All right. Anybody? Thoughts?
I think there's a lot of overlap between supplements. So letting them know that they don't have to do like 30 unique essays helps a lot, whether it's like them starting with the UC and then realizing that those UC prompts turn into supplements, or whether it's just tackling supplements head on and then realizing, oh, this community one goes with all these other community ones.
So what's the first step to having a student kind of crystallize their path, to mix metaphors? What's the first step you would have them do, David?
I think just getting it all on a document helps a lot, so then you can at least even see the overlap. So you can actually kind of start to understand how many unique essays you really have to do.
Yeah, and everyone here has worked the Common App workshops with us, so we're all familiar. One of the things that we always do is after students generate their college, list, in the Common App where they have all their colleges, they will then go through and they will cut and paste all those supplement prompts onto one document. And then some students will then color code ones that are similar. Some students will take, you know, uh, little bits of ideas from other essays, like their personal statement, and kind of drop it in and just kind of cross pollinate all these. But in the beginning, it is a little bit messy. Does anyone else have a way to kind of get them to understand how to take all this chaos on the document and organize it better? Or what process might you do?
Yeah, I mean, on top of all the things that you said already, I think organizing by date or like deadline also helps. So like kind of work in batches, like, okay, we've got our November 1st, which is a deadline we just passed. So, usually we've grouped those things together. Then we'll group our November 15th together, and kind of so on. So there's no point in stressing out if you've got a lot of supplements to write on, like an LMU or someone with a later deadline first, if you've got a bunch of smaller ones for other schools that you need to tackle straight out the gate. So like, I think just breaking up it in a time appropriate fashion definitely helps.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So in kind of order, a lot of students will just kind of bring everything over to the document. I'll get an example of what that looks like right here. So, at the top here, let's go to another one. Sorry about this, Jenky. So here's a student who has all of their prompts on one page. They're putting their honors college, their optional ones, and then putting the word counts. And then students will start to kind of look at all these and make some, common connections between them. And what we were saying at the opening of this is that a lot of students will have overlaps because of the schools asking very similar questions. They all want to build communities. They all want to have people embrace diversity. They all want to know why you're coming to the school, what you're going to contribute. So let's kind of break in to those, individually, and let's talk about what we normally see students doing. So if you are working with students and they come up to you with a why Boston University, or why Tufts, or why whatever school it is, what are some things that you might encourage a student to do to help them start brainstorming this? Because let's talk about the bad version of this first. So what is the bad version that you guys see? And I know we say this with kindness to all our students, but what is the bad version that you get on this? Like, anybody?
I mean, I think the biggest pitfall for this question is to be too vague and too broad. It's really easy to say, excuse me, you could write this one and apply it to every school. This school has such a great location and it's the perfect size, and I love the athletic team. And that's very not specific. And you could copy and paste that into a response for any university that has an athletic team, I guess. I think that's
I
for
love
me.
your football team. Yeah. I'm sorry. So what was the last part that I ran over?
No, just that, yeah, I was repeating myself. So good job running it over.
Yeah, oh, you're welcome. So when we have, as Hannah was saying, a situation where a student literally just takes kind of a knee-jerk reaction response to a school, I'm really excited about attending, Boston University, to be able to participate in all the different majors and be part of the vibrant community. And then they drop in like one or two kind of capitalized things, like a course name or a name of a building or a name of a quad. It does feel a little bit transparent that the student really didn't put much care into this. But then on the other side, we have a lot of students that just don't have time to research 18 schools or 12 schools or however many schools they have and really say interesting things. So is there a hybrid between like a vague or general template and then a combining of very specific details into those essays to really make them pop? I see you nodding, David. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I usually kind of think in 4 categories for these white essays, and like the 4 categories being like classes, student organizations, special programs, and research, depending on what things the student's actually interested in.
Mm-hmm.
I think the golden ticket is special programs. Like if you can find something like, for example, like USC's global business program, where someone will be in Shanghai for a semester, and then London for a semester, and then Sicily for a semester to get like a global business understanding. That's great. Like that shows that they have done research into the school and actually are applying for a specific reason. But like what you're saying, not every student has time for that. So I do think, landing on like a major's curriculum and finding some specific courses that they're actually interested in, like not just saying, oh, this course number looks interesting, but actually digging into the descriptions and seeing like ways that would help them in their future with their passions, and the reason why I think that isn't like an in-between of like super vague but like not the hyper specific research or special programs necessarily is because once you get good at kind of looking through one website's curriculum or one website's course list, or every school almost has like the same campus labs set up for their student orgs, you can kind of become quick at doing it, you know?
Yeah, and I think that you just hit on it is, when I kind of go through this with a student, the first thing is I'll take them through one school, kind of like you were saying, like kind of find your rhythm. I'll be like, all right, here's the website, and then we'll go through whatever, things the school might have that we can check out. I'll even tell them to go to the Instagram and look at that stuff because the school's always touting things that they're proud of. We get a sense of that. Then as David is saying, then I will go down to the departments and programs, get a sense of their life there. Then if they are talking about a specific major, then I'll go into a specific, classroom or course catalog and get a sense of that. Sometimes I'll jump in on videos and just kind of watch a few from the student, day in the life and kind of write notes down because it's really easy to watch a video about a student talking about, going on the T to the Boston Commons, or going to Faneuil Hall, or going to an Eagles football game, or going down to the quads over, on the lower campus or the Newton campus. And I don't know that stuff until I kind of see this stuff. And what happens is I think that students will then jot down a bunch of little things, like you're saying about whether it's, freshman interest groups or clubs or, an inspired, and then you get all this kind of like clay, and then you can start to kind of shape things out. And we don't want to cannibalize something about a major if we need to do that in another essay. We don't want to repeat things twice, so we don't want to talk about major in the why this school if we are going to have to do a second essay as well. So we're gonna have to find other things. What other
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Just one thing in the why this school. Sometimes I feel like there's a risk of also doing too much research and just writing things about this school. Like oftentimes the other part or side of the question is, why do you think you're a good fit for this school, or why is this school a choice of yours? So I'm always encouraging students to marry the things that they're picking about the school with their experience, right? So like something that they've done, a club or an organization, a sport, something they've done in high school that makes sense. Like, oh, because of my experience doing this, I'm interested in this. So still use it as an opportunity to tell the school something about you too.
Absolutely, 100% agree. In fact, I usually have students get their hay, all their facts and information and understanding. And then I say, like, how does this relate to you? And for example, I always talk about one of my favorite why school essays was a student talked about, this pre-COVID, but walking across Stanford campus at night and seeing a telescope, and everyone was gathered around this telescope looking up into the sky. And the student said, what is this? And she was a high school student visiting. And someone who had the telescope was an astronomy major. And she said, oh, are you guys all astronomy majors? And then everyone was like, no, I'm a theater major. Oh, I'm a comp sci major. And then what she talked about was how energetic and kind of passionate and cross-pollinating everybody was. And that excitement is really what she wanted. That really was a moment on campus that signified what was important to her, which is, communicating to her peers and kind of understanding that there's more than just a major to the school and there's more than just a social life. It is actually about being among people that are going to push you and change you. So she did that. But another student might talk about, Matt, do you have an example of when a student might be able to kind of refract the school through themselves in a way?
Yeah, like, let's take a classic activity like Model UN, right? Where you're, you say the student, that would work great for a bunch of careers or potential programs that you might be interested in. But like through that, you could highlight collaboration, right? Like you could boil down the collaboration needed in Model UN. And because of that, like I see myself in this program because I like to work well with others. I have experience doing that like on a large scale. I've participated in a number of Model UN tournaments, you know, with my team from my high school, and learned to interact with kids from another school. You know, I learned that I interact and learn best when working in large group projects, you know. So if that fit the program that they were picking, but really any activity could be preparation for a program or interest, right? It doesn't have to be, you know, just a, you know, a namey one like Model UN. It could be
Right. Like
baking.
MUN, for example, like I think about a school like Elon, which is known to be very collaborative and all the students work in group projects together. So then you could kind of tie that into their kind of motto in a sense, or like, you know, MIT, think through your hands or whatever the motto is. But so what you can do is you can kind of grab the school's kind of identity, and then you can put your own identity, which might be via an activity like MUN, and match them up that way. You know, that could be something that could really be helpful. You know, talking about like Northeastern, I'm a hands-on learner. I want to be in co-ops. Like find something about the school that is representative of that school and really dig down deep. And I think that maybe it was David when you were talking in the beginning about how it yeah, we want to just make sure that we are drilling down into a specific thing that feels real. I think that's the biggest takeaway is let them know that you actually care about this school, whatever. And sometimes that is just through showing research. Sometimes that is kind of embracing something. If you've ever been on the campus, let them know that. If you've like participated in Zoom meetings, like let them know that. Show them that you have demonstrated some interest. Any last thoughts on why this school, or how to kind of, use things from one school and bring it to another?
I'm not sure about using it from one school to bring it to another, but I just in the vein of letting them know that you're interested, I think also speaking with alumni can also be a really useful thing to bring up here. If you were moved by someone else who attended this school, that's a great thing to bring up and very specific, and shows that you put effort into learning about the school in a different way.
Yeah, talking about alumni, and that's kind of, watching videos is the kind of wholesale version of that. Going and talking to someone and someone saying, hey, the best thing about the school is this or that, and really getting that insight so that you can really drop little kind of tidbits that you did do your homework. And this, doing your homework and actually having an affinity for the school is first and foremost. And then secondly, showing them how you fit in. But there are other places that we can show them how we fit in. So why are you interested in this major? And I think that everybody on this call has plenty of students that really aren't sure what they want to do or be, and they're kind of bluffing. They're saying that I want to do a pre-med major, and we know that they may turn into a communications major 6 months in, or they think that they want to be an engineer because they're good at math, but then they start doing the classes and they're like, I don't want to do this the rest of my life. There are, plenty of people who love that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but just letting everybody know that it's okay not to fully know what you want to do, but to bluff it as though you do know. And this does really need to match what you're applying as. So, don't write about your interest in, theater if you are someone that is writing on the application that you're applying for, mathematics. But when you have students being interested in majors, what do you guys do? What's your kind of protocol and how you kind of dig them into it? Celeste, any thoughts on this? I always always put you on the spot.
Really similar to what people were just saying, actually. So I usually will, find a school someone's really excited about, first of all, and then like go onto their actual program page and classes, look at like not only classes, but what special program, what, do they specialize in? If they specialize in anything, like do they have clubs, all these different things, so they can kind of connect with that major, and then try to pull their life as well that connect to it.
Do you find that students, and this goes for anyone but Celeste first, do you find, like I just brought up, I just clicked on a course catalog for American, and course titles are coming up. And I sit with students all the time and I'm like, all right, and you guys have heard me talking a lot of times when people look at course offerings, it looks like a menu in a foreign land where a lot of the words, they don't know what they are, but they can recognize some things. And I'll say, what about this looks interesting to you? And a student will be like, museum. And then they'll just, whoever the student is, they'll pick their own things. Sometimes, do you guys have a student mention a particular class or two and say, I'm really interested in this, and I noticed you have this with this professor? Does anybody do that?
I do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Everyone's like, yes.
I mean,
Yeah, go ahead, Hannah.
I think it can help. I think finding a professor that's done research that you're really interested in can be very useful. Again, this is a time-intensive process, but it is really worth it. Or to look at the calendar for the department that you're going to be majoring in and seeing what events they're putting on, seeing what speakers they may be bringing in, and finding, oh, I see you're bringing XYZ to speak at your university. I'm a big fan of this person for XYZ reason. That's another avenue beyond just the course load to talk about why this major and this university is particularly suited to you. If they're going out of their way to research something that is of interest to you, that's an even better reason for you to attend this university and this major than maybe another university that doesn't have that research opportunity or isn't bringing that other speaker to their university. But that's an easy place. The calendar is like a little trick. You can skip the course load and just look at the calendar and find something to talk about there.
Yeah, I think calendar, course offerings, department descriptions, published professors or professors who've done research. I find a lot of that stuff on their social, network pages, but obviously going to the, colleges and schools primarily and just looking at the overview of each school. So, what is, let me kind of find a better one. Chapman, going to the colleges and schools, and then I can, talk about like, oh, what it means to go to, Dodge Film School or, Dodge College of Film or Fowler School of Engineering, and kind of saying, I like the fact that this engineering program allows me to explore different types of engineering, but I really want to go towards electrical engineering, but I'm still open to moving around, and kind of understanding what the school allows, because some schools don't allow exploration, other schools do. And I think it's okay for a student when they're expressing their major to talk about not being 100% sure. Like, yes, you can say, I know I want to be pre-med, but you can also say, I'm interested in pre-med and I want to go this way, but I'm also interested in computer science. So I might be interested in, quantitative biometrics, which is another major where students use data science to study like living systems. And so you might see that students are kind of drifting, and that's what college is for. College is for that exploration. So if we pretend to know everything and we're lock, stock, sure, the colleges are kind of like, okay, like, yeah, sure, that you know exactly what you want to be. How many people here change their major in college? Like Hannah, you went in writing. Melissa, you stuck with it your whole way through?
I added and lost a major, but I was the same major the whole time.
So I changed like I think right before the deadline from sophomore to junior year. And Hannah, you just went in as a writer right out of the gate?
Yeah, I was one of those lucky ducks that I knew what I wanted to do and I got into a great program and I stuck with it. So still doing it. So I think it turned out okay.
Yeah. So the one thing that is, it's okay for a student to express a little bit of, slide back and forth, lateral slide in the major, but at the very least show a passion for something that's at the core of that lateral slide. So if you're thinking about pre-med or, biometrics, at least you love biology, right? So you kind of do need to kind of express that. The next one is, I I think that a lot of students struggle with this one. Some students, it comes really quickly to them, but for a lot of students, they just don't know, they're like, I don't know. I come from a house with like married parents and, I'm not anything, especially interesting. I hear students say this stuff all the time. And then they're like, how do I kind of puff that into something of interest? So how do you take a student through this when they don't feel like they come from an especially unique or different community? And we'll get into the diversity question in a minute, but how do you kind of how do you approach this one?
One of the things that I always ask when I'm first talking a student through this question is that I ask them to think about what are family traditions? What are things that you always do? What are things that you love doing and that you have done since you were little? Because a lot of times it can feel like, oh, this is just a normal thing that everyone does. This is how everyone grows up. And the reality is that no matter what situation you're in, you do have a unique tradition or a unique something that you do that you don't realize that's unique to you and your community.
Yeah, they almost need someone to shine a light on them or turn them towards the mirror, so to speak. Kevin, who's not with us today. Kevin, where are you? Just kidding. Kevin said last time, think about the different communities there are, and as Melissa's saying, there are the communities of your household, there are the communities of your school, there's the community of your sports team, there's the internet community that you may be a part of. There may be all different things. So what are some other ways that you guys tap into their communities or encourage them to, you know, express their community?
Yeah, like literally anything could be a community. That's like the first unlock that I say is like, like all we need to do is find one interest. Like I've done stuff with like dance, coming from a community of dancers, right? People are going to be dancing at every college that you could go to. Like dance is a community. People that play squash, that's a community, So, I know, Scott, you're very anti-squash. There was that one incident where you were robbed of the championship, but
yeah, robbed.
no, I mean, I think it's just like, this is a great place to show passion and commitment to the thing that we're talking about. So like, I would just say like anything could be a community. So let's pick something that you really care about, and ideally something that you haven't talked in depth about elsewhere in the application. And let's find a way for you to show that you're an expert, show that you're engaged and how you engage with this thing. And don't put the pressure on it like you need to be, like with this one and the next one, the diversity one, students put a lot of pressure, like, I got to do something like big, it's got to be like the thing, and that's what I'm trying to push them away from. Again, like every supplement, it's like be specific.
If you have I have two follow-ups set. The first one is sometimes I'll have students that, I'll say, well, and this may go into diversity too, but like, what religion are you? And they'll say Jewish. And I'll say, do you want to write? But like, no, I don't want to write about that. Not really that, hardcore into being Jewish or, like follow traditions that much. I go, well, it's still a community you're part of. You celebrated these holidays. And then they start to think about it and they go, oh, yeah. And ultimately, this brings us to the other question, which is, what does the college want from this answer? What are they looking for? Is it that they're looking for someone to say, I love the squash community because they're, the most amazing people? Or is it that I got something from, I'm watching the Queen's Gambit on Netflix right now, the community of chess players, that could be a, whole kind of world there. Community of what? But what does that show us about somebody if they come from a community? Why is that a valuable thing for a college to understand about you in order to assess whether or not you're good for their campus? And I know Matt, you mentioned passion. Can anyone else kind of tease out some elements that they think that the admissions officers are looking for in these essays, or what they're hoping to kind of glean?
One way that I back into this question sometimes is think about, rather than trying to identify a community, try to identify an experience or a group of people you've been involved with that you feel has changed you. that's changed your perspective, that has helped you grow, that has challenged you. And it does two things. It helps kind of you back in like, oh, I guess this is a community. It could be your siblings.
Right.
That's a way to identify a community, and it's a way to address kind of what you're talking about, Scott, which is how has this community shaped you and made you into who you are? How has it given you tools and experiences that are going to make you a valuable part of the community that you're hoping to join, which is this university you're applying to?
Yeah, and that almost sounds like, tell me if I'm wrong. The word is almost like investment in the, like, not like, it's like someone's invested in something, and if it's invested in something that changed them, like for example, I have a student right now who's writing a community essay about skateboarding, and he says, he's like, can I do this? I'm like, tell me about it. He's like, well, I've been doing it since I was 7 years old, and I know all these people, and I know people look down on skateboarders, but there's also a really independent streak of an art form and an aesthetic, and we all get injured pursuing what we do. And by the end of it, I was like, sold. Like, I'm for it, because that person is invested in that world. That person is then going to understand that they kind of created a fraternity or a sorority or a community that they kind of built among the population at large, because they have a passion that they really committed themselves to. So like the investment in something, I think, is important. Like the commitment, I hate the word commitment sometimes, the college application, because everyone thinks that's showing you do 9th through 12th on your activities list, where we really on this call know it's really about students caring about something enough. Any other not oddball, but any other communities that you guys have kind of seen students kind of flex in a way that has been interesting?
I once had like an all-star engineering student write about like the underground punk scene, and it was a great essay, and it was like a really cool movement away from his character. I think the community essay is kind of a cool spot to show a different side of you, like he was able to.
That's a great point. And I do, I always love when students do kind of take, we talked about in the person UC Insight questions about the palette, but to suddenly put like a bright color there when everything else is so academic or so rigorous. I know a lot of parents get a little nervous when they see their son or daughter writing about an underground, punk or about skateboarding, but we know that this shows well on the student if there's kind of the passion there. So how will you contribute to our diversity? Another question that I think that some students say, like, oh, I'm just like everyone else at my high school, the color of my skin, my religion, or whatever. But let's kind of go around the horn and talk about, what types of things people can pin their diversity into. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like this is one that almost every student I have struggles with at first. They look at it, they're just like, oh, like I don't have any diversity. I'm just blank, And I'm just like, okay, well, I think the big thing to talk about with this is like, what are the small or what seemingly small actions kind of create an inclusive community? You know what I mean? Someone could talk about having like diverse traditions all day, but if they don't like actively care about fostering a community of people that are unlike them or like them, it doesn't mean anything, right? Like, so I think talking about your values is one thing that always helps. Talking about like how you have an open mind or how you show that you have an open mind, whether it's
Yes.
your actions, go a long way. Because at the end of the day, like, I mean, I don't think I'm being overly optimistic here. I feel like most of my students are pretty open-minded and inclusive. And like because everyone around them is maybe acting similarly, they don't think it means anything. But like small things like asking questions to clarify things that you don't understand go a long way. And I think that's something, or as an example of something to talk about here.
So when you said show diversity or show experience, I'll have students that will move. Well, let me kind of back up. I think that the end goal, we'll do this in the opposite way of community. We'll start out and kind of discuss what the admissions office is looking for first of all, which is, are you going to be able to, I say, like, be helicopter dropped into a campus, you know, parachute in, land, and be able to embrace all the different types of people around you. That's like if they put you in a room with an international student or someone who's completely different beliefs than you, or somebody that is, you know, a different color, different sexuality, different anything than you, how are you going to respond to that? And that's what the school wants to see. Are you going to be someone who kind of passively embraces this or actively embraces this? So I think that sometimes it's helpful to show or, yeah, tell a story about, you know, your own interactions with diversity. And, you know, I've had students talk about moving into a new school where they were different than everyone else and they had to kind of, you know, find a way to assimilate. And that being embraced encourage them to embrace other people. I've had students talk about having a sibling who has, you know, autism, or a sibling who is LGBTQ plus, or, you know, a stepfather who's a different religion or race or anything. And those active elements of that student's life can then be brought into the essay to show, look, I've experienced a situation where I've had to either be accepted or accept others, and I do it happily so. But do you guys see students kind of using like specific examples to break this one open and kind of get into it? Or do you guys see students coming more generally at like in terms of diversity?
I think for me, all 50, it's, you know, it's, or maybe even like there's other ways to get into it also. So it depends. I think if you have that personal example, it's great, and it's a great way in, and it takes some of the pressure off the question. I think a lot of people feel like they don't have that. So then I think a lot of the routes that David was talking about are like super smart ways to think about getting into this question. I think also, like, you know, you could, like, you don't have to focus, like, I think people get so caught up on diversity meaning black and white, that's the only type of diversity, right? You know, there are other types of diversity, you know, religious differences, or, you know, people come from all different cultures. So it could be a great opportunity to talk about cultural traditions that you have within your family. Could be diversity of thought, you know, like, yeah, you think of things in a different way, you know, mathematically compared to, you know, someone more with like a writer brain type person. So I think, yeah, I mean, maybe that's kind of like to the left of the question you asked, but I think that there are, if you have a specific example, that's great, but there are so many ways that you can get into it, and there's so many ways to think about this question that, like, don't get trapped into thinking of the most obvious one, you know, especially if you don't have a route into it.
Yeah, and I guess when I'm kind of encouraging people to find a specific example, I'm really kind of nudging them really hard to think about when they do feel different than others around them, or when others have, you know, a student who moved from Florida and kind of came with a conservative viewpoint and then came to liberal California. And at first she was like, what is this? You know, and then her kind of change, and she's still conservative, but her ability to kind of, you know, talk and communicate with people around her showed a diversity of viewpoint. Another student will write about, you know, being the only hardcore AP scholar on his wrestling team. And, you know, he's different, and, you know, he's more of a, you know, athlete with these guys, and then he's more of a MUN guy with these kids, and he at home he's more of this. And it's really just about showing how you can plug and play into different communities and how you can accept things. But I do feel that the schools do want you to take a stand in terms of, at least by the end of the essay, saying, I really want to, you know, contribute to the depth and texture of your campus, and 100% open to other people having their own ways of, you know, being and doing. Celeste, what about you on this one before I turn the page on this one?
Yeah, so I usually have people find a specific story too. It'd be harder for people Clubs are usually like a really good place. I found that sometimes people join clubs that they think are like, what am I doing here? And they have to interact with somebody who's from them in that club, or like a lot of people are different from them in that club. And that's made some nice diversity essays. I've seen like people like feeling weird about being the only woman in like a STEM club.
Absolutely.
Or yeah, like, so I think in the South Bay, sometimes like females realize like, you know, if you're doing something rad as a female, like that's still you being diverse in the situation. So I see a lot of like female students not realizing like that applies to them, because they do see it as like, you know, like I'm not diverse in some other way. So yeah, I do try to find a way where they interacted with somebody who was different from them, even if it's just like in thinking.
Yeah, and so I think everyone is kind of circling the same thing, and at the end is we just want the colleges to know that you, the student, are somebody who is going to be a kind of a play well with others type. And if you have something that you're going to add to the profile of school in your own kind of uniqueness, fantastic. And if you think you're less unique in terms of diversity, but you're 100% open arms towards others, I think it can work either way, as long as you are someone that can, do that. So the oddball miscellaneous ones, like, letter to your roommate, or, some people think drawing a perfect circle is a test of genius. What is your test of genius? Describe yourself in 3 words. What are some other oddball ones you guys have seen recently? Any come to mind?
How many oranges can you fit inside of a 747? Oh no, wait, that's like an interview question.
Is that really a question?
Yeah, it's like they want to see you work out the logic of how many oranges could fit inside of a plane.
Okay. 7. But with these, I would think that, like USC has the notorious list of like, like what's your hashtag? If your life had a soundtrack, what would it be? And there's all these other ones. And I think that the main issue that I see students doing is they're not as playful as the school wants them to be. They come at these a little bit too seriously, and the main goal of this is to have students thinking or showing themselves to not just be the rigid kind of please accept me because I'm doing everything you want me to, but actually just being human, living, breathing 17, 18-year-olds. And, I think Chapman just added a lot of fun ones this year. I think it was Chapman, but what are your suggestions on this? Because I'll have a student that'll say, my favorite movie, should I put Citizen Kane? I'm like, have you ever seen it? They're like, no, but I heard it's the best. I'm like, no, put in Bridesmaids, put in whatever you want. But how did we find the balance between playful, serious, what we think the school wants, and what we actually want to say? Anybody?
Yeah, I think it goes kind of what you're saying, leaning into it fully, like I think it's Virginia. They have one about teaching a flash seminar.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some
what would the title of it be? I think it might be North Carolina. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of and the whole thing is a lot of times students are like, should I do like a really like heavy duty topic like splitting the atom? And I'm like, how about something like exactly what you're saying, like be playful with it. I think on those short answer ones, I think the zone that trips the people the most are ones that ask about like adjectives to describe themselves. And I think the main thing is just not to be picking like dedicated, committed, hardworking, like
persistent,
funky, or if you feel like there's a theme that organizes your life, like if you're super into like burgers or something, be a little burger heavy on there. Like just it's what you're saying. Be playful with it. If they give you space to be playful, why would you not?
Yeah.
Do you have a student who the theme of their life was burgers?
Yeah, last year their theme was surfing and burgers, and like it was like threading through. It was great. You know, or not. That was another one that nacho students go into, you know, that USC engineering now. So, you know, yeah.
Yeah. So, what about the balance between playfulness and seriousness? Do you like give us, because some of these, like they'll say favorite book. I told a student put To Kill a Mockingbird and Snow Crash, or like you know anime book or manga book. You know, I sometimes say put two things in and just try to balance them out, like Moby Dick and Confessions of a Shopaholic. You know, like try to find you know, the balance rather than just committing to all serious or all like, I'm so goofy and zany. Look at me. I love tacos and, you know, I don't know, bubble baths. Ultimately, I think that, you know, I had a student, you know, I did an on track the other day with a family, and the first thing I looked at was the three words, you know, to describe themselves. And it was like determined, committed, you know, caring. You know, I was like, you know, like I see that on every single one. So the first thing is to try to get unique, to try to be playful, to not take these for granted. I think that we say this on everything, but supplements, and this will be kind of the closer as we head out. Supplements are something that we will quite often see students I don't know. They will start to get lazy towards the end, and then you'll start to. I've even caught student supplements where they have the wrong name of a program or the wrong school, or they've kind of like just they're starting to kind of get like it's almost like driving on a long road trip, and you're just starting to like kind of fall asleep at the wheel. Students are falling asleep at the wheel with their supplements. They're just cutting and pasting. They're dragging things over, and we would rather students take a breath, treat these seriously, and then, you know, maybe have your application go in a week or two later, but have better supplements, obviously if there's not a deadline. Because think about it, the personal statement is for all the schools for the Common App, you know, and the UCs don't have supplements, so I'm basically talking about Common App schools and some individual school websites and maybe the coalition. But the Common App has their main application that students are using. So these supplements are the only thing that you're doing specifically for that school. So if you really do like Tufts, or you really do like, you know, whatever school it is, Northwestern, and you kind of speed, you know, just toss those out and you don't really take the time to do it, you're basically saying, I'm not caring about your school as much. So I would say that the most important thing would be that students don't kind of be dismissive of these. They get organized from the beginning. They try to show love for every school. They try to use bits and pieces from the other ones to inform the next one, but also not to kind of get caught into the vagaries. Final go around. Yeah, Matt.
Just real quick before that, I have a question. Curious of how you would answer this. It's been coming up more this year than in years past for me. Students saying, you know, I'm worried. I talked about this in another part of my application. You know, like I mentioned this in my activities already. Is it okay if I write a supplement about it? Or like I kind of mentioned this briefly in my personal statement. Is it okay to talk about in my supplements? I find like that's a question or a thing that comes up a lot.
I mean, obviously, we're always trying to not be redundant if possible. But if there is something in the activities list that can be kind of broadened or deepened in a supplement, then sure. Because remember, the Common App is not the UC app. The UC app gives us a lot of space to write about the activities. The Common App gives us, what is it, 150 characters or some little thing like that. And then, so if I'm only allowed that much, and then I'm given a chance to do a supplement, I think it's totally fine. What I think is not okay, and I think you guys would agree, is when someone does their personal statement on, you know, building a computer, you know, and it's all about kind of assembling this computer and how hard they work. Then they write their, you know, their field of study is computer science, and they talk again about building a computer. It's like, all right, find a different way to slice that orange. And I think that this goes back to the UC Insights. If you're going to talk about baseball, talk one about coaching and then the other one about like teamwork or whatever it might be. So you can do redundant things if you're taking different angles on them, but too often we see students just hitting the same note in multiple places, and then that gets, I think, lackluster at the end of the day. But let's go around, just everyone say like a closing statement about supplements, what you would tell your students if they were listening right now. Like what is the, we do the writing labs and we always tell people, you guys are on your supplements, do this, that. What would be the closing statements on your supplement advice? We'll start out with Celeste.
I usually have them do the diversity or community supplement first, because that's usually the hardest one. So I would go with the hardest supplement, but maybe depending on where you are in the process, like if you're just starting with supplements, do a school that's more of a safety school first. But then pretty quickly I move them onto that diversity one, so they have more time.
Do you think students get better at writing the supplements as they go?
I do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that,
so, yeah.
the first supplement that comes out of the chamber is like, we talk about, SAT and ACT, like the first pancake. The first supplement is like the first pancake also, give it to the dog. And that matters less if you're applying to a school that's a safe school, and sometimes these optionals. But excellent advice. David?
Yeah, I think it's a reiteration of like what you were saying, like not to neglect these at the very end. Like in the moment, you may feel great to be like, okay, now another college is checked off the list. But I guarantee that in a month, you won't be feeling that way, Like,
ominous.
I mean, it's true. It's just like the relief or the satisfaction that you're going to get putting full effort into these like ones that you really care about at the end is going to outweigh everything at the end of the day. It's like, it's the idea of going from safety supplements first to reach supplements last. It's like, like by doing that, you can't just like rush these out, and like if they're reach schools that you really do care about, as I feel like, your whole college list should be, like you're going to want to put in that effort, and you should, I think.
I like looking at a student who's completed their supplements and they put them all in one document, and I'm looking at like, wow, these all feel rich. They're all communicating with each other. They're all showing different parts of you. Like these are funny, they're personal. And some of these supplements are 50 words. And rather than tinkering with a 50-word supplement, scrap it and rewrite it. Just try something new. Melissa?
I think the most important thing that I try and communicate with the supplement essays is that this is your opportunity to make the university you're applying to feel special and feel that you really like them and feel like they want you as much as you want them. So I think take the time to really make them feel special and make them feel like they like you and that you like them. It's like making a new friend. You have to do that.
Make them feel wanted. I like that. Like, kind of like be unabashedly affectionate towards these schools and unabashedly passionate. Excellent. Matt?
I think I would just say be specific, and no sweeping statements where like I think I would be a great candidate for this school because I think the school is really awesome. Or like, I'm so hardworking, like the general answers. And like, a lot of times, like, I feel like the first pass I do through supplements, I can delete like the first 3 lines of every supplement because it's just like general platitudes about the school. Just like it's such limited space. Like we need to use it with specifics about you and specifics about the school. So keep it simple.
Yeah, excellent. Be specific, be specific, be specific. Hannah?
I think Celeste's advice is very good. I would also recommend identifying the supplement you're most concerned about and being honest with yourself about that and prioritizing attacking that supplement, knowing it may take more time and more drafts. I'd also like to remind you of your free writes that you've done for your personal statement that may not have made it into that final draft. That's great material that can be very useful in the supplements. And you should go back to those first free writes and revisit them and see if there's anything useful for the supplements.
That's an excellent point. My final thing would be, I notice this a lot when students say, this would be really good for me. Getting into your school would help me being the best that I want to be. Like that's the same thing I notice when people write cover letters to apply for a job. They'll say stuff like, this job would be really great for me because I need the money. And I'm like, what about the company? And the college is thinking, what about the school? So I always try to take that. I know that students aren't trying to be selfish, but I try to take that selfishness out of it. And I try to say, look, it's more about saying, if I come on campus, I would like to contribute, learn, and, evolve and participate, like all those things that show it's a two-way relationship. And you're not just saying, if you accept me, I'll be able to be exactly what I want to be. Like the school's like, great. How does that help the world? How does that help us? That just gets you what you need. And I think that students do need to kind of be careful of that sometimes. But overall, everybody, keep going on your supplements, keep working. Make 2 documents, one document that has the prompts and it's clean, and then one that has the prompts, like just, Google Doc copy or Microsoft Word copy. And then the other one, just get in there and do free writes, answer questions quickly. Don't think too much and just kind of be playful, work hard and kind of get your timeline out. Like Matt said, do the ones that are hardest first, if that helps you, like Celeste said. Be specific, be passionate, like everybody said, and keep on going. And I think that's it for today, everybody. Yeah, fist bump, elbow bump. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, specialists, as always. You guys are awesome. Thanks. Bye, guys.